burst of flame and a flash of light, and there in the tide is a frightening sight, as the tall ship, all the flame lights up the sky.
Hello, Kenzie. What you just heard was an excerpt from the Lennie Gallant song Tales from the Phantom Ship. I will put a link to the song down below so you can take a look for yourself later and listen to the whole thing, but in the meantime, let's take a little trip to the East Coast. My story today is settled along the Northumberland Strait on the east coast of Canada. The strait is a body of water in the southern part of the Gulf of St. Lawrence, separating P.E.I. from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, and it is the primary site for apparitions of what has come to be known as the ghost ship of the Northumberland Strait. That's right, Kenzie! This week, I'm settling into some ghost folklore for once. Sightings of this ghost ship have been reported since as far back as 1786, though as you can imagine, tales of the ship and what it was and who was sailing her have changed dramatically over the years since the first story started to appear. With that in mind, we can find this story a little bit interesting in that it sets itself apart from other pieces of folklore that we've encountered in the past, even ghost stories that we've encountered in the past. Unlike many, if not all of the tales that we cover on this show, the ghost ship of Northumberland Strait sets herself apart with the undisputed mystery of who she is and where she came from. Though the descriptions of what she looks like don't stray too far from one to the next, tales of what she is, where she comes from, and what she means change depending on who is telling them. There is no solid historical basis for this story. No event that we can point to and go, that's her, that's what happened to that ship. There's no solid event that we can pin down to where this apparition may have come from. We don't have a name or a date, we simply have a ghost. So what do we know? Most accounts agree that she was a full-rigged sailing vessel, though some disagree on how she was rigged. Claims range from it being a 3-masted square rigger, while others see a topsail schooner of a more ancient rig. There are 2 reports listed by researcher Edward D. Ives which speak of it as a large steamer with upper and lower decks brightly illuminated, though those reports are extremely isolated. Most settle on descriptions of a schooner with 3 to 4 masts, completely engulfed in flame, and sailing before a northeast wind. In 1900, a group of sailors in Charlottetown Harbor spotted the ship in the night. Believing it to be a vessel in despair, the group took rowboats out in an attempt to offer help and rescue the crew. As they approached, however, the ship vanished. The stories documented by Edward D. Ives circa 1957 claim similar experiences. A P.E.I. resident reported his wife pointing out the window one night and asking whose light that was across the water. When he approached the window to take a look, he saw a full-rigged ship in flames sailing northward up the strait at impossible speed. A fisherman from Campbellton claimed to have seen it while out on the water one night, though when he tried to approach, she kept well out of his reach. Yet again, a woman in Burton said that she watched from her window for as long as an hour, not only saw the rigging in flames, but also claimed to see people running along the length of the deck. And you might notice from even this handful of stories that the ship doesn't appear to be isolated to one specific part of the strait. In fact, it has been seen along all of the borders and doesn't keep to a single harbor or shore. The result is an almost overwhelming number of sightings and folklore that have sprung up around it in various parts of the area. Now, we're talking about a relatively large span of geography here. If you take a look at the map again, you can see just how large the strait is, and all of the people along that border have heard about this ship in one way or another. The way Edward Ives writes, it seems as though near everyone has at least a relative who has seen it or can recite off a specific story related to it, and all accounts agree that the ship was aflame. One of his witnesses claims at times the fire would burn low, and again it would billow up in clouds of flame, illuminating every detail of masts, hull, and rigging. Or again, another witness claiming to see it was all on fire from end to end, quite long, high in the bow and stern, and low in the center. While we watched, it blew up in the middle, parted, and each end sank. But like I said, there is no collective understanding or specific story as to where this ship comes from, who crewed her, or what her name even was. As far as what the ship was meant to be, some claim the appearance to be associated with an oncoming storm, foretelling a bad easterly gale. Ives quotes a source that provides 5 alternate options to this. First, that the ship was the remains of a pleasure craft which burned when a lamp was upset in the captain's cabin during a drunken brawl. Now, this is actually consistent with a handful of other tales from the islands, claiming that the fire was set during an onboard fight. Second, that this is the remains of a Quebec-bound immigrant ship, which was blown off its course and struck by lightning, burned to the water, and all hands perished. Third, is that it is the supposed ghost of a ship that was never heard of after it left Scotland for a Nova Scotia port. Fourth is the claim along the New Brunswick coast that it is actually the John Craig Light, that being the name of a ship that wrecked off Shippagan Island. And fifth, some have related it to the story of the Woman in White apparition, though this tale is more of an extension of the story than it is an explanation towards the history of it. This version claims that some fishermen watched a woman dressed all in white walk into the water and then disappear, after which they saw a ball of fire go bounding over the calm waters, preceding and illuminating the phantom ship rising from the water. Ives concludes his chapter on the ship, quoting an informant's statement about another similar phantom ship. Until a short time ago, I regarded the fire ship as pure fiction, with no basis other than the proneness of humanity to see wonders where they are expected or where others say they exist. I now believe there is really some natural phenomenon in that region which manifests itself in such a way as to be imaginable as a ship on fire. In light of this statement, let's take a look at a couple of natural phenomena that may be to blame for this. First and foremost is the tenuous explanation that it may be moonlight shining through a bank of fog. A red crescent setting upon the waters on a foggy evening may well give the impression of a ship on fire if you aren't looking too closely, and of course people are apt to see whatever they think they want to see in situations like that. The other option is something called St. Elmo's fire. St. Elmo's fire is a natural weather phenomenon that can occur during thunderstorms. A luminous plasma is created by a discharge from a sharp or pointed object in a strong electric field, creating the illusion of blue flame. This was named after St. Elmo himself, the patron saint of sailors, and the phenomenon often occurred on ships at sea during a thunderstorm. It was widely regarded to be a good omen, often viewed as the sign of the presence of their patron saint. As it may often be mistaken for fire on ships, it may be one cause for explanation for some of the sightings of the phantom ship in Northumberland Strait, though the theory falls apart pretty quickly when you consider the sheer number of sightings. It seems unlikely that a tall ship would be in the strait at the exact moment of a thunderstorm on the exact moment that every individual has seen it, but who knows? And finally, naturally, a story such as this would be incomplete without the mention of at least a little bit of piracy. The figure to emerge in this case is the infamous Captain Kidd himself. There are some theories that claim the ship was one of Kidd's vessels, stating, and quote, that the captain and all aboard got burnt after sinking and pillaging a vessel from the old country, and the crew got drunk, and the captain and all hands in some mysterious way set the ship on fire, and all hands perished. Captain Kidd reportedly claimed he would sail the waters dead or alive, and he would sail the Atlantic forever, and maybe that's exactly what he's doing. Kenzie, I'll see you next week.